hundreds of others in recent weeks. It's our prayer that something definitive will be done to stop the situation that is inhuman. That was 15 years ago. And part of my opening remarks at a hearing I held on July 10, 2012, one of several hearings on religious persecution in Nigeria. 1 year later, in 2013, I visited Archbishop Kedama, who's now the head of the diocese in Abuja, but then it was Jos, Nigeria. And we visited 5 churches that had been firebombed by Boko Haram. And we spent hours after hours listening to survivors telling their stories, loved ones who had lost people when these car bombs and other violence occurred at these 5 churches. Such courage and such faith and resilience, despite their loss and pain, was absolutely inspiring. I mean, these people were resilient. They didn't want to fight back and kill. One of the persons says, "I prayed for my oppressors." And I'm thinking, wow, what faith? But the government has to do more, and it wasn't doing it then, it's not doing it now. I went to a Nigerian IDP camp in Jos, Nigeria as well, and met with an evangelical believer, Habila Adamu. Dragged from his home with his wife screaming, "Please don't hurt him," the Boko Haram terrorists threw him on the ground, put an AK-47 through his nose and upper mouth, and said, "If you don't become a Muslim right now, blow your brains out." And then he said, "Are you willing to die to stay a Christian?" And he said, "I am willing." He was asked a second time, "Yes, I'm ready to die as a Christian," he said. This time the terrorist pulled the trigger, and the bullet ripped through his face, and when I did meet him, there was obvious, really scarring from that bullet that went right through him. They left him for dead. He survived. It was a miracle, in my opinion. So I asked him to come to Washington and tell his story. And at the hearing that I shared, he said, "I am alive because God wants you to know this message. Knowing Christ is so much deeper than merely knowing Boko Haram's story of hate and intolerance." But then he said, "Do everything you can to end this ruthless persecution. But know Christ first." I mean, his faith was still so amazing, and you could have heard a pin drop at that hearing when he spoke. Shockingly, we had to fight for years to get Boko Haram even on the foreign terrorist organizations list. The hearing that I did in 2012 on it, we heard from the then Assistant Secretary for African Affairs, John Watson, who told us, and I quote, "We believe that the larger element of Boko Haram is not interested in doing anything but attempting to discredit and disgrace the Nigerian government." So he said, "They're just trying to embarrass good luck Jonathan, who was obviously the president at the time, because he wasn't doing enough anymore." I had no idea that this was the idea of creating a caliphate and doing it all by force. And so I introduced legislation. I called it the Boko Haram Terrorist Designation Act of 2013. And on the day we were marking it up in my subcommittee on human rights, the State Department announced that they would designate it an FTO, and they did on November 14, 2013. You know, we even had the president of CAN, the president of the Christian Association of Nigeria, at a hearing. And he said something, and these words just stick in my heart and mind. When he said, "By refusing to designate Boko Haram as a foreign terrorist organization, the U.S. is sending a very clear message, not just to the federal government of Nigeria, but to the world, that the murder of innocent Christians and Muslims who reject Islamism, and I have a clear distinction between those two, are acceptable losses." And he went on to say how important it was for America to speak up, to stop turning our heads askance and seeing or not seeing what's going on right before us. You know, there was also a big push for a while to train the Nigerians in counterinsurgency against terrorism. I went to the Fusion Center in Abuja. I met with members of the State Department, and even had a couple of hearings on that. And they said, "Well, the lady and then will allow us to do it." I said, "Well, when you take one person who's a bad apple and a human rights defender and apply it to whole regiments and platoons and say they're all disqualified, you're not going to find anybody." But at that hearing, the Undersecretary admitted that at least half of the people in the Nigerian military could be eligible to get very world-class training from us to try to mitigate the danger of terrorism. Religious leaders in Nigeria were outraged, as you all know, as were we, as were people on this panel, when the Obama when the Biden administration and Secretary Blinken went and took away the designation of country of particular concern. Now, our Assistant Secretary over here for Human Rights, Democracy, and Labor did a magnificent job in teeing up that this is something that needs to be done, and President Trump did it. CPC, country of particular concern, a designation created by the great Frank Wolf in his International Religious Freedom Act of 1998. And yet, here we go. They downgraded it and said, no CPC. And that was done on a trip to Abuja by our Secretary of State in the last administration. So I asked that hearing at the hearing, what was the criteria? Never had an answer. I got crickets. So I introduced a resolution, HRES 82, calling on the Biden administration to redesignate Nigeria as a CPC. I introduced it 2 years ago. A year later, right around now, February 2024, it came up in committee. It was a very vigorous debate. And unfortunately, many of my friends on the other side of the aisle sided with Blinken and said they shouldn't get it. And if Nigeria does not qualify as a CPC country, nobody does for what they do each and every day to Christians. You know, I introduced a bill called the International Religious Freedom Act of 2016. It became law. And we named it after Frank Wolf, again, the undisputed champion of religious freedom in the world. And we put entities of particular concern in some other categories. And, of course, Boko Haram and Islamic State, West Africa province were so designated. I'm hoping that the Trump administration will also, that the Fulani in a very similar way as entities of particular concern in addition to CPC. Just a final point, and I don't want to go too much longer. Nigeria was the country with the most Christians killed in 2024, according to Open Doors. I remember Brother Andrew. Frank Wolf and I met with him time and again as we traveled around Europe. God's smuggler, he did an amazing job with Open Doors. Open Doors continues at that work. Well, their World Watch List, released on January 15th, found that 3,100 Christians were killed, 2,830 Christians were kidnapped in Nigeria in 2024, far more than any other country in the same year. The Observatory of Religious Freedom in Africa released a report on August 29th of last year, and they found 55,910 people were killed in the context of terror groups in Nigeria within just 4 years. Only a fraction were killed by ISIS or Al-Qaeda affiliates. They pointed out that Fulani ethnic militia, the FDM, killed at least 42% of all civilians. They also found that the largest category of civilian killings, 81%, were done by the Fulani. They invade small Christian farming settlements. I know Bob Destro did so much of this as well, as did others. And they raid, kill, burn homes, and crickets, and again, almost no response from the government and from the police. So the time to act is now. CPC is the first major step, hopefully will be done very, very soon. And then we need to work with the president in that country, especially our president, to really combat this really existential threat faced by Christians and moderate Muslims. Thank you.
We are Biafrans. We are very, very resilient. You cannot kill us or come and kill us and get away with it. We must arm every single citizen of the United States of Biafra that is 18 years and above. Anywhere they are, anywhere you go, and somebody comes there to kill you, kill the person first. It is called self-defense. Honorable Uche, go ahead and put up that bill on the board. Dear friends, all you need to do, just click on that and put in your name. Vote yes or no. We have 7 to 8 minutes to do this. Thank you so much, everyone. Dear friends, based on the number of yes votes for this particular bill for self-defense for Biafrans, and based on the number of the people that have voted today, we hereby today, February 4, 2025, pass this bill into law in the United States of Biafra to allow Biafrans to be able to self-defend themselves from these killers, from the reintegrated terrorists from Nigeria that are coming to kill us by the day. Again, self-defense being necessary to the security of liberty and a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms for the purpose of defending themselves and the state. This right shall not be infringed upon. Today, Biafrans have voted by the majority to do everything within their power for self-defense. Thank you so much, Biafran. This bill has become law today.